Ahoy there! Thanks for checking out my video. Wave 5 of the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass DLC for the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe game for the Nintendo Switch system has been out for almost 2 months now, which means all eyes have been focused on Wave 6 for almost 2 months now. You know Nintendo fans, no sooner we get one thing, we eat it up, digest it for like a minute, then go back for seconds. And I say we because I'm very much included in that. In fact, I kicked my Wave 6 speculation into high gear basically minutes after the Wave 5 trailer dropped. Now if you know me, you know that I love to collect data, and ever since Wave 5's release, I've been collecting and recording predictions from all over the Mario Kart community, and it didn't take long for them to all start blending together because the lineups don't vary a whole lot from person to person. While that's unfortunate, I will say I like it better than having the wave completely solved like we thought we would by now. But in any case, today I wanted to break down each of the 8 slots in Wave 6 and explore the possibilities for each, and explain why most of them are almost universally agreed upon. And by the way, before you click off this video at the end, please consider posting a comment with your Wave 6 course predictions. I'd love to hear your thoughts and add more data to my collection, and you know dang well I'm going to be talking to you if you manage to get it right. And while you're at it, if you wind up enjoying this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you're interested in more videos like this. I know that's a really cheesy thing to say, but you'd be surprised how many people just forget to do that. With that said, I'm the CEO of Lasagna, and I'm no good with intros, so I'm just gonna hop into this. Before we dive straight into the slots though, we should briefly go over where our information is coming from. Right now there's 3 big things we need to be examining to piece together the final wave. The unused Booster Course Pass prefix order from version 2.0.0, the internal codenames for the 40 courses currently in the BCP, and the courses in or data mined for Mario Kart Tour. That latter thing is the supreme authority on what will and won't come to the game. It's been established time and time again that all courses in the pass are remastered from Tour, so if it's not making it to Tour, it never had a chance to make it to 8 Deluxe. Meanwhile, the BCP's unused prefix order and internal codenames give us a glimpse into the development process for the pass, as they correspond to the originally planned lineup, which for at least 95% of the courses was merely reordered to give us our final product. For reference, codenames are set up like so. The C stands for Course, the NSW stands for Nintendo Switch, the underscore is there to look cool, the first number corresponds to the wave, and the second number corresponds to the placement within the wave. For instance, DS Strum Ridge's codename is CNSW_16 because it was always planned for the 6th slot in Wave 1, while GameCube Waluigi Stadium's codename is CNSW_36 instead of CNSW_47 because it was initially slated for the place DS Peach Gardens ultimately took in the Moon Cup. We can use these codenames in tandem with the unused prefix order to determine what the remainder of the lineup should look like. Since the prefixes were found with Wave 1's release, 31 of the 32 courses in Waves 2 to 5 have codenames that signify that the courses' games of origin were not changed during development. As such, I think it would be reasonable to expect most of the remaining codenames to retain their original prefixes as well. Based on the fact that we already have 4 courses released for the pass with CNSW_6X codenames, there's no reason not to assume that the codename system I described earlier won't hold true until the end for all 48 courses. So, just what are our remaining codenames? They include CNSW_51, 54, 56, 57, 64, 66, 67, and 68. In other words, Wave 6 is set to include both of the original Feather Cup Tour City courses and both of Cherry Cup's non-Tour Retro courses, while its Acorn Ender and most of its Spiny Cup have been retained. Now it's finally time we dig into what we know about each of these codenames so we can see why everyone's predictions are so similar. I'm going to save the 2 more contested slots for last. Let's start off with CNSW_51 and 54, the original 1st and 4th courses of Wave 5, which both had the Tour prefix. We've established that Tour prefixes are for city courses, Rome Avanti and Madrid Drive are currently out for Tour, and since there aren't any other remaining Tour prefixes, nor is there any evidence in Tour's data to suggest any more cities in the proverbial pipeline, there's no two ways about it. Acorn Cup and Spiny Cup are going to be opening with Rome and Madrid, although after what happened with Athens, the original Spiny City in case you didn't know, which is anyone's guess at this point. Next, let's look at CNSW_57, the original third course of the Cherry Cup, which is slated to be our second and final Super Nintendo course in the BCP. And all I have to say is, legitimately, what is wrong with Bowser Castle 3 doubters? Who hurt them? There's literally no reason to think a Vanilla Lake or Koopa Troopa Beach or anything else even has a semblance of a realistic shot at this point. I can understand tempering your expectations, but at least bring some logical thought processes to the table. Nintendo can do whatever they want doesn't really cut it when every decision they've made with the past has made at least a little bit of sense. You expect me to believe that the tour devs, long known for their affinity for Super Nintendo courses, explicitly avoided the Bowser Castles for all of this time, then in 2023 finally decided to acknowledge them, but only one, and it's the hardest one, and they give it an insane glow-up aesthetically and layout-wise, very highly unusual for Super Nintendo remakes. While the BCP devs decided to stick an ice circle as the penultimate course of the penultimate wave, then later moved it to the final wave? I shouldn't have to dwell any further on the absurdity of such an idea. Bowser Castle 3 is in Wave 6. Moving swiftly along, next up are CNSW_64 and 67, the Acorn Ender and Spiny 3 respectively, which were two of Wave 6's 3 blank slots. A booster course not having a prefix indicates a Tour original non-city course, regardless of whether it makes its initial debut in Tour or in the past. In this case, it looks like we won't have any arguments about whether Wave 6 has any new courses, for we have exactly 2 non-city courses in Tour that aren't yet in the past, Piranha Plant Cove and Piranha Plant Pipeline, and none seem to be on the horizon per its internal data. At this point, Mob NU and Mob MU are all but confirmed to be scrapped or early versions of other courses. All taken together, it looks like we'll be getting all 21 Tour original courses in the past, just like we always knew we would, even though up until a month ago we thought it would be 22. We'll touch upon what happened with CNSW_63 in a moment when we come to the 5-6 mystery. As for which course has which codename, it's generally agreed that Cove would have been most appropriate as a cup ender, which would mean Pipeline was intended to be the penultimate course of the whole pass. And honestly, that wouldn't be a bad choice at all, at least in my opinion. The last of the widely agreed upon codenames is CNSW_68, and I don't think I need to spend half the time I spent on BC3 telling you why it's Wii Rainbow Road. As everyone and their mom knows, the BCP was slated to end on a Wii course, and again, given their track record of at least making some sense with their course placements, do you really expect me to believe that this spot was ever meant for, say, Dry Ruins or Daisy Circuit? Especially after the first half of the pass ended on a Rainbow Road. Come on guys, I never entertained the idea of Moonview killing off Rainbow Road for a second. The idea of it not getting in was always ludicrous, and it will always be ludicrous. Finally, we come to the more controversial of the Wave 6 slots, CNSW_56 and 66, which incidentally were both GameCube slots in the original unused order. At first glance, this doesn't seem like a big issue. There are currently 3 Double Dash courses in Tour that aren't already in 8 Deluxe, Mushroom Bridge, DK Mountain, and Dino Dino Jungle, and internal data indicates no more coming anytime soon. As a result, some people will jump to Mushroom Bridge being 5-6, one of the jungles being 6-6, and calling it a day. But others, including myself, have some reservations about this thought process. Remember Wii Moonview Highway, the course that broke the BCP speculation scene? It was previously assumed that all of the courses had been decided on by the time Wave 1 released, and that courses were merely subject to changes in order, but Moonview's codename, CNSW_63, originally a blank prefix, is concrete evidence that something threw a wrench in things. Whether Acorn 3 was a placeholder or a scrapped tour course ultimately doesn't matter, although I am convinced it's the latter. The bottom line is, some major changes in plans took place here, and as a result many of us are calling into question the prospect of us still getting 2 GameCube courses in Wave 6. After all, if Bridge, a Flower Cup traffic course, was slated for Wave 5, and Moonview, a Special Cup traffic course, was slated for Wave 6, why on earth would they delay Bridge to the final wave? Now, just to be clear, I do think we're getting one of the jungle courses in any case. It seems like a no-brainer that at least one of them was planned from the beginning, and I'm inclined to believe that the devs are trying to stick to the original plan where it makes sense to do so. But I'm also inclined to believe that it doesn't make sense to stick to the original plan and delay Mushroom Bridge to the final wave in lieu of Moonview Highway. In fact, at this point, I'm inclined to believe Bridge was never planned in the first place. More likely, both jungles were intended at one point, or a once-planned GameCube course never made it to tour for whatever reason. So that's why I and many others are predicting that one of these GameCube slots won't be a GameCube slot when it shows up in the final release. Now that we know why the Wave 6 speculation scene looks like it does, I'd like to go over my own predictions real quick. And just to clarify, yes, these are my own predictions. I don't predict anything just because it's the common consensus. I always have my own thought processes for things. I know it doesn't do much to go against the grain, so to speak, but you know what? Sometimes things are overpredicted for a reason. Sometimes it just makes sense. And Nintendo usually makes sense. They're not going to do something zany and wacky solely to throw us off if the alternative would make much more sense. Starting off with the first course of the Acorn Cup and, oh boy, this is a little awkward. Well, if you've spoken with me recently, you probably know that I've been very strongly in favor of Romavanti being in Spiny Cup ever since it released. And even after the Summer Tour trailer dropped, my stance did not change at all. I had even originally written a defense for that stance in this video script. But as I write, Madrid Drive just came out today, and honestly, having played it, I cannot form a concrete opinion yet, and for that matter, I'm not sure that I ever will. All taken together, vibes, layout, release order, these courses are pretty much neck and neck in my mind. While I would say Madrid is a better fit for Acorn than Rome due to Rome's dark and dramatic atmosphere and difficult layout, Madrid's bombastic yet regal, sprawling, and varied presentation makes it a perfect fit for Spiny as well. I said all that to say this. For now, I'm still slightly leaning towards Madrid Drive in Acorn Cup, but if you came here expecting me to take a bold stance and defend it with my life, I'm sorry to disappoint you. My official predictions are Madrome Dranti for Acorn 1 and Romadrid Avive for Spiny 1. Moving on to Acorn 2, and currently this is where I'm predicting we'll see our Mystery Retro. As of now, my best guess as to what course will be taking that title is a little Star Cup track known as Wee Daisy Circuit. It's so funny to me that just a couple months ago I would have been seen as absolutely nuts for predicting this. Why DC of all courses, you may ask? Well, truth be told, there's no single kicker piece of evidence that alone puts it ahead of the competition. Rather, it's a bunch of smaller factors and interesting things that line up well for it in particular. After I finish going through my predictions, I'm going to go over each of these contenders and explain my positions on them so you can see why I feel this way. For now, just know that this is definitely the slot I'm soonest inclined to change my mind on. There are several other contenders and I go back and forth with them pretty frequently. As for Acorn 3, I think this is where Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's final GameCube course is going to appear, and currently I feel it's DK Mountain. If you've known me personally for any length of time, you probably know that Dino Dino Jungle is one of my favorite courses in Double Dash, and that for the longest time I was predicting that it would make the cut. However, I gotta say, it was pretty much always a 50-50 thing for me. Both had so much going for them. Most of the evidence that I and others presented in trying to give one or the other an edge was either poorly researched or just copium. But I'm here to announce that I've come to the place where I think DK Mountain has a serious, legitimate edge, and that's because of the big scrap and swap fest that gave us Moonview and our Mystery Retro. I believe that the best explanation for Moonview's inclusion in Wave 5 is that both jungles were planned initially, DK Mountain as CNSW_56 and Dino Dino Jungle as 66, and when a tour course was scrapped and things had to be reshuffled, it came to the point where either both were going to be in Wave 6 or one of them had to go. And unfortunately, I don't think Noshi would make it out of such a showdown intact. I know we had DK Summit in Wave 4, but I think the BCP devs probably care about catering to fan favorites a little bit more than issues with design and thematic overlap with a course 4 cups back. And of course, Dino Dino is a fan favorite in its own right, but come on. It might have made sense in a world where Mountain was never planned, but I no longer believe that's the world we live in. I won't lose any sleep over this though. I still really like DK Mountain, and Dino Dino was in 7, so much like Airship Fortress, I can wait for it to come back again. As an aside, DK Mountain's appearance and tour does not factor into my decision at all. It was first datamined in early 2021, most likely before the pass's conception, and its perceived weird scaling has nothing to do with how it would appear in the pass. The tour model is essentially a downscaled remaster of the Wii model, which is itself an upscaled remaster of the Double Dash model, and the model would have to be rescaled all over again for 8, so I don't want to hear any of that scaling nonsense in the comments. Rounding off the Acorn Cup, we have the lovely Tour Original lap-changing archipelago course, Piranha Plant Cove, which the community seems to have finally made peace on after months and months of squabbling over whether it would be in Wave 4, 5, or 6, whether it would come with PD Piranha, whether it would have a tour prefix, etc. Personally, I'll have you know I always predicted it for this spot. I think Cove will be their way of carrying on the tradition of 2023 waves having one of the cups start and end with a city course. Even if Cove isn't exactly a city, it does essentially function as one, with its adventurous but arguably more subdued aesthetic making for an excellent cup closer. Next, opening up the final cup of the entire game is one of the top 2 best city courses Tour ever produced. It's big, twisty, varied, has unique obstacles, players visit and drive across iconic landmarks, and in a way it was Tour's last city course. I am 100% confident that everything I just said will be true about the Spiny Cup opener. You may not question me on any of that. The next slot is where I suspect one of the most hotly anticipated retros, pun entirely intended, Super Nintendo Bowser Castle 3 will finally splash onto the scene. As a dramatic lava-filled Bowser's Castle course, I do not think it's fit to be the second course of the wave, while as an ultimately fairly simple Super Nintendo course, I also don't think it's fit to be the penultimate course of the entire pass, especially considering its initial placement in Wave 5. That leaves us with Acorn 3 and Spiny 2, both of which are very believable placements in my eyes. For the time being, however, it's my personal opinion that keeping it away from Daisy Circuit, another relatively flat and simple course with a lot of orange, is the best scenario. Plus, it frees up space for DK Mountain to be the penultimate course of its cup, and we all know how much Nintendo loves to put massive fan favorites in third slots. Now, for the penultimate course of the pass, we have what I consider to be Tour's best non-city course, even if it has one of the worst course names in the series in English, Piranha Plant Pipeline. In spite of its mildly redundant theming and naming, Pipeline is an all-time classic that even beats its amazing 3DS ancestor in my opinion. It looks good, sounds good, is very tricky and twisty, and unlike Cove, it's a good thematic shakeup for Spiny Cup, making it a magnificent choice to precede what will doubtless be the final course of 8 Deluxe, which, to the surprise of absolutely not one single person, will be Wii Rainbow Road. There's no other course that could go in this slot, and there's no other slot where this course could go. Since the Wave 5 speculation cycle, I've actually been offering to bet $200 that this course would show up, and no one has taken me up on the offer yet, even during the Moonview scare. I wonder why. Going back to the mystery retro discussion, to close out this video, here's a tier list I've put together ranking these contenders as I view their chances of making it in. Starting from the bottom, I'll briefly go over some things going for and against each of these courses. DS Luigi's Mansion, a mild fan favorite which may give Wave 6 vibes on a surface level, but ultimately it's extremely simple and wouldn't really be the ideal pick for another DS or spooky themed course. Game Boy Advance Bowser's Castle 4. Getting both BC3 and BC4 would be my absolute favorite outcome, but I shouldn't have to explain why that's not happening. Game Boy Advance Cheep Cheep Island. Another instance of a relatively simple course that only barely has final wave vibes, and there being much better options available for an extra Super Circuit pick. At least this one doesn't suffer as much from redundancy as the former two options. Game Boy Advance Lakeside Park. This course seems like a perfect fit for Wave 6 on paper, but in practice it's not a good look. I will defend what Tour did to the course until the day I die, but it is not a layout worthy of Wave 6, and the thematic redundancy with the pretty obvious GameCube jungle wouldn't help, especially if it's DK Mountain. Nintendo 64 Frappe Snowland. More like Frappe Snow Mid, am I right? As a Mario Kart 64 kid, I hate that this is our best shot at getting another 64 course. Thankfully, I'm pretty sure Nintendo knows better than to let this thing rear its head again. Wave 6 would do very well with a nighttime winter course, but if they're going to do one while also reviving an Origin game that was thought to be done back in 2022, I reckon they'll go for the one that isn't dreadfully dull and simple. 3DS Wario Shipyard. Honestly, this course would be a pretty significant contender if it wasn't for Piranha Plant Cove, another nighttime course that focuses on underwater ruins and even briefly explores a shipwreck. Putting these courses in separate cups would involve either making Cove Spiny 3 or Shipyard Spiny 2, both of which feel like massive stretches to me, so all in all I sadly really don't think it's happening. GameCube Mushroom Bridge. Yeah, I'm not counting out entirely. It's not as nonsensical as the courses I just mentioned, but it would still be pretty silly. Bridge would have been fine for Wave 6 in a vacuum, if slightly lame, but delaying it to the final wave while pushing its big brother Moonview ahead? Next you're gonna tell me they put Sunset Wilds in without the sunset gimmick. Wait. Double GameCube Jungle. The issues with this idea are pretty self-evident, methinks, but it's not as big of an issue as some make it out to be. Both are big fan favorites after all, and even though they both involve trees and have the same music, in practice they play very differently. If Nintendo wants to please as many people as possible, they might just decide to do both. Especially if you agree with my theory that both were planned at one point. Game Boy Advance Yoshi Desert. This course would mean back-to-back waves with flat desert courses from Super Circuit, and it might be objectionable to put it in the same wave as the relatively flat Super Nintendo Bowser Castle 3. Otherwise, it's actually a pretty alright fit, if, again, a little lame. DS Airship Fortress. I really like how Airship finally has a legitimate chance again after the Mario Circuit fiasco, even if the presence of Bowser Castle 3 presents a sizable hurdle. However, it's not an impossible hurdle. Wave 5's Los Angeles Laps demonstrated that the devs aren't above reworking a course's entire presentation when a simple remaster would put it at odds with a nearby course. So if they saw the outcry over the lack of Airship, I think there's hope after all. Just don't get your hopes too high. The fact that Bowser Castle 3 was delayed at all doesn't bode well. 3DS Shy Guy Bazaar. I know this may seem like a really odd choice, but in practice this course's biggest issue would just be the presence of another sandy course with Shy Guys in the previous wave. Thematically, Bazaar would be perfect for Acorn 2, and unlike some courses I've mentioned earlier, it's not really problematic as a Mushroom Cup course at all. It's nice and long and has plenty of obstacles and split paths, and on top of that, evidently it was originally planned for the Mario Kart 8 DLC back on the Wii U, so it could act as some nice poetic justice. 3DS Rosalina's Ice World. Ice World gets so high on the list just due to how great of a fit it is thematically and difficulty-wise. It's one of the very few possible courses that has absolutely no thematic overlap with any other course in Wave 6, while also being a Special Cup course and perhaps taking over Vancouver Velocity's role as a nighttime snowy course for the wave. It's also been mentioned that Ice World has a potential to include a half-pipe along one particular section of it, and there's no denying that the BCP developers have a thing for half-pipes. However, for several reasons, the course may not exactly be the devs' first choice for a replacement retro. Not only is it a relatively ancient course by Mario Kart Tour standards, but it's also not really the most iconic course they could surprise us with, even from Mario Kart 7. So, as much as I'd like to see it, and as much sense as it makes, I'm afraid they may be inclined to pick a more, dare I say, trendy course to fit in. Wii Dry Ruins. This course's chances both grow and suffer due to it being a Wii course. The established overabundance of courses for Mario Kart Wii in the BCP and in Tour may signify that the developers favor them due to that game's extremely high reputation among fans. However, it is also possible that they know they should probably dial it back a bit. Other positive factors to consider include the fan favorite status of DDR in particular, the fact that it would be our first stereotypical yellow desert course since base Mario Kart 8, and its emphasis on half-pipes, which again the devs definitely favor. At the same time, many argue that the course's remake in Tour, while relatively recent, wouldn't lend itself well to a BCP remaster, with somewhat awkward turns, the removal of Yoshi branding, and actually reusing elements of Mario Kart 8's GameCube Dry Desert. I personally don't think that's enough to stop this from being a top contender, but there is one course that doesn't exactly suffer with any of that. Wii Daisy Circuit. The main knocks I can offer against Daisy Circuit are that it is a relatively plain circuit course, the fact that we just got a Daisy course in the previous wave, and the aforementioned overabundance of Wii courses, not to mention the fact that its inclusion would mean that the only Tour Wii course that missed out was the highly esteemed DDR. However, there is evidence in the course's Tour appearance that leads me to suspect that it might have been added to Tour specifically so that it could be brought to the pass. You see, Daisy Circuit is actually part of a club of courses in Tour that, per internal data, were completed in the last week of October 2022. This is interesting because there were a grand total of 2 new completed courses between August and September, and then suddenly we have a time frame that seems to be an absolute hotbed for tracks that were destined for the BCP, such as DS Mario Circuit, Wii Moonview Highway, Wii Rainbow Road, and Super Nintendo Bowser Castle 3, although there are obvious outliers. And let's be honest, it is one of the nicer looking remakes in Tour, isn't it? So all taken together, while it's not the nicest fit and probably wouldn't be the ideal outcome for most people, I currently believe it's Daisy Circuit's race to lose for this spot. And hey, I win either way, right? If it gets in, I can say I called it, and if it doesn't get in, then we probably get a better track. And with that, I think that's just about everything I have to say on Wave 6 speculation for now. If I ever change my mind on something, or there's a big new conspiracy theory I want to cover, I'll probably make a new video. So if you like my style, you might consider liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, etc. And don't forget to share your course predictions in the comments if you have any. Have a good day and happy speculating!